So if you guys just give me about 2 minutes of your time, I'm going to show you everything that you need to become a Wall Street boss. All you need to do is pay 5 payments of $9.99. No, I'm just kidding. This is all free information. So, as the title states, it's perhaps not what you think it is. But what I wanted to share with you, some of you guys are climbing up that ladder and getting more senior in your career, and maybe you're looking towards making that transition into management roles. And I wanted to sort of explain some of the differences between being, more junior level position, mid-level position, to getting to higher level position, some of the changes that you can expect in terms of mindset and responsibilities. So that's going to be the topic of this video. But before I forget and before I get into it, I wanted to recommend to you 2 books that I use as guides for me. This book is The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. So there it is. Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. It's a pretty good book. It's not too verbose. It's only 153 pages, so pretty good book. Check it out. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon. That's where I got it from. The next book is The 5 Patterns of Extraordinary Careers, The Guide for Achieving Success and Satisfaction. This is by James M. Citron and Richard A. Smith. So here's the that book as well. So 2 good books to take a look at. So let's get right into it. So basically, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of perception versus reality. I know people look at being in management, and I think a lot of people maybe focus a lot on the money. I mean, certainly the money is better, and that certainly allows you a lot of opportunities, better vacations, and just the ability to kind of really do what you want, right? So that's good. I have no complaints there. However, I think the money is more exciting when you don't have it. So I'm not trying to downplay it in any way, but it's just, I think we focus a lot on things that we do not have. So if there's some kind of physical possession that you want, you can kind of get obsessive about it. If there's a certain income that you want, you can get kind of obsessive about it. And that's good because that obsession can lead you to actually attaining those goals. But once you actually achieve, and there's actually a term for it, once you actually achieve your goals, whether you get the possession or the income or whatever it is, it doesn't quite have the same level of excitement, shall we say. Now, don't get me wrong. Let's say you have a dream of one day having a nice car, AMG, Mercedes-Benz or something like that. I'm not saying once you get it, it's like, been there, done that. But what I am saying is it's certainly not as exciting as the idea of having it when you don't have it, especially when you're close to attaining it. The closer you get to it, it's kind of really, you're getting more excited. But once you actually get it, it doesn't quite have the same thing. And then the idea is it's kind of a I don't know if that's a correct term I want to use, but it's kind of like you achieve one goal, and then now then you have this kind of a now what attitude, right? So just a little bit of perspective. So I think it's important to do what you love to do. It's important to have the right career that is a match for your skill sets and your interest levels, because, you know, the idea of doing something purely for money and spending a lot of time and years invested into something, and it's not something you love, I'm going to tell you, man, all the hard work and stress that you have to go through to sort of climb that ladder, I don't know that simply, I mean, it depends on how much money you're talking about, but I don't know. I mean, I remember turning down a job which was a considerable amount of money. It was actually at Bank of America a long time ago. And I didn't turn it down. I actually took the job. It was a consulting work, and I didn't stay there very long at all. It was a lot of money, but it was just not worth it to me, because the amount of hours that they wanted me to work, and it was back to back. I mean, you're working late into the night, and then you're coming in really, really early. And then based on my commute, I wasn't getting enough sleep. I remember one time leaving the trading floor and I felt like a zombie. And that was a moment when I said, this can't work. So although it may sound like, you know, making a lot of money is this amazing thing, and it certainly can be, but what's the point if you don't have time to enjoy it? That's the perspective you have to understand. Now, the idea of taking a high income job for a short period of time, and then you accumulate a lot of money, and then you move on to something else. So you sort of take the sacrifice on a short term, maybe perhaps when you're younger. There's certainly a strategy that might make sense for you, and I could appreciate that. But in the long term, doing something purely for money where it's taking up a lot of your time, and then you don't really have time to enjoy it. So, oh, you got all this money, now you can get a great car, but you don't have any time to drive it, right? You get, you know, months and months can go by, and you realize that you really haven't taken much time for you. You've just been focused on work and the job, right? And that's just not an ideal scenario. So I think it's very, very important to make sure that you're doing something that you enjoy, something that you love, and that you're not purely focused on the income. Now, as far as moving into management, I think one of the disconnects that there is, I think there is a perception that I certainly heard a lot of talk. You know, people think, you know, managers, they don't really do as much work. It's the people under them that's really doing the work, and you know, you're just sitting in some fancy office and going from meeting to meeting, and you know, younger people will think, I could do that job. You know, it's not a big deal. You know, are they really worth all that money that they're getting paid? But the reality is that what I've learned is that it's very different when you are at a lower level where you have procedures that are already defined and laid out, and you can just follow the procedures, right? You have knowledge that you've attained either through independent study or through, you know, you went to a university or something like that. So basically, you already know what to do, right? You already know what to do. It's all in your brain. You just have to recall, you know, this is how you do this. This is how you do that, right? So, and also, again, you have senior level people to lean on, right? How do I do this? I'm stuck on this thing, you know, and I think at a lower level, that sort of dependency kind of it definitely allows you a certain level of comfort that you don't necessarily have, and different environments are different. I can't, what I'm describing to you is my experience. You know, depending on what kind of company you work for, what's the size of the company, things may vary, but I will say that it's definitely a lot less stress when you have senior team members to rely on. You have a manager to that you can actively work with, right? At lower levels, you'll work more with your manager. Your manager may be close to you all day, or at least just very accessible to you. And it's not that at a higher level, your manager is not necessarily as accessible to you. It's just the appropriateness of your leaning on your manager. In my opinion, it goes down, right? When you're at a lower level, it's okay and expected in terms of a certain level of dependence. Now, again, different environments vary, right? So even at a lower level, you know, depending on certain jobs, they may want you to be, they want you to have a certain level of independence, right? But I still find that when you're at a management level, you're really, the level of independence that is expected of you is much, much higher, and therefore that adds to the stress and pressure. So here's one of the perspectives to consider. So at a lower level, you have your job to do, right? And you can basically just do your job, and as long as you're doing your job and you're doing it within expectations, you're good to go. Now, if the procedures that you're given are flawed, it's not really necessarily your fault, right? You were given procedures to follow. If you're following the procedures and there's a problem with the procedures, it's not your fault. It's not your procedures, right? You can simply present that, hey, you know, I did follow, you know, what I was told to do, and this was the outcome, and it's not really on you. But when you're the person who is coming up with the procedures, when you are the person that needs to strategize in terms of you know, the direction that things go in the future, it puts a lot of pressure on you, especially when a lot of that work is done independently as opposed to a team effort. And once again, environments will vary, right? But what I found is there's a lot more teamwork, there's a lot more collaboration at the lower levels, because there's I don't know, it's just I guess team is really the word. Not that you're not part of the team as a manager, but it's just very, very different. Because again, typically what I was used to before is you normally sit with a group of your colleagues, and you may sit next to each other, and even a manager may sit next to you or within eyesight of you. But now think about being a manager where you're away from everybody else, right? Who do you rely on when you get stuck? Now, unless you're even a CEO has somebody to answer to. Well, unless you're the CEO, you have a boss. So it's not that you don't have a boss, but it's just your boss is not going to be as accessible, and your boss is going to expect you to be able to figure out a lot of things on your own, make a lot of decisions on your own, and you should only be going to your boss for very, very limited amount of things. And from that, I find to be one of the most challenging things. And I remember many times where I've been very sort of frustrated because I'm trying to conceptualize a strategy or a plan of how to address something. I'm trying to design a sort of either procedures or methods or, you know, anything like that. And again, it's not something that it's not something that I'm following, right? I can't just like read a book and like, hey, this is how you do this. So I need to be able to sort of collect the data in terms of looking at all the information. So what are the objectives? Like sit down and put your notes together. What are the objectives? What's all the information that is relevant to that objective? So from that information gathering process, then I need to strategize, you know, how I'm going to accomplish what my goals are. And many times I'll want to come up with different options. So, I can approach things from this direction, from that direction. There's also research as well. And the interesting thing about a lot of the research is it's not that you're going to Google something and then find like an exact, like, hey, I found, a procedure for how to do this thing. I just got to do A, B, and C. You ultimately have to come up with a procedure. So when you're doing research, you're looking for inspiration, you're looking for ideas, and you're looking at multiple sources. But ultimately, the ideas are coming from your brain, right? You're creatively conceptualizing it and, coming up with an idea of how to problem solve, whatever that may be. So it's definitely, I don't know, it's hard to describe. I think it's a similar process to if you have any creative, like if you're into music or art, or you're a writer. I'm sure you've heard of a concept of like writer's block. So I think a similar concept applies. Hey, CKKO, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Go ahead and click on the like as you join. So the idea, if you're an artist and you've ever had like writer's block, it's a similar frustration, right? If I'm coming up with some kind of an art piece of some sort, and I'm trying to think about what kind of colors to use, what kind of textures to use. And again, I can't just like Google it, right? I can't just, it's something that I learned in school. I just have to recall the way that you design this abstract art piece that I'm putting together is you have to do this and then that, you're creating, I don't want to say creating something from nothing, but it in a way you are, right? So I guess the frustration and the challenge comes from until you figure it out, right? Until, in art, until that idea is manifested, you're just stuck. Right, you're just stuck, and I don't know, it's just very, very different from maybe you're trying to remember something, right? So let's say if it's something it's something with math, right? So you're trying to remember what is the formula for this thing. Well, you shouldn't really be struggling that hard. Well, I guess yeah, because even though you could Google it, you need to know what to Google. So maybe you're sitting here trying to remember what type of math would I need to solve this problem? So you need to think in your brain, you're trying to remember, but you're recalling something, it's in there, right? It's already in your brain. So that's a different process, right? It's a different process trying to recall something than trying to create something, right? Because it's not in your brain. Like, how do you force that out? I can't just force it out. Again, like an artist, a writer, any of these types of creative tasks, there's no way to sort of force it. I mean, sometimes things can come organically when you're dealing. I mean, art is more, I don't know if emotional is the word I want to use, definitely more organic. So you can sort of flow, right? Because I used to play a lot of music. I used to play piano. So I also used to write music as well. So with that process, it can be more organic where you just go with you feeling. So imagine you're dancing, right? It's not that there's a specific, oh, I need to put my leg to the left now, and now right 1 foot or something. You know what I mean? It's not mechanical. Sometimes you just go with how you feel. And with art and music, it can be a similar process. But when you're coming up with something that is technical, when you're solving a business objective for a new product, right? A new service. The main thing that you have to work with is you have your ability to sort of just your basic problem solving skills, right? You have that. You use things like deduction, right? You also have a lot of knowledge of different business concepts and strategies that you can use as sort of reference. So in your mind, you can perhaps reflect back on a problem that was similar to what you're trying to solve in some way, right? So that is kind of how some of these solutions, they'll come from, where you may remember one problem that you solved and there was one concept that you utilized that may be applicable to what you're trying to do, and you pull that from your memory, right? And then you can mold it to fit what you're trying to do. And then you may think of something else that you did, another thing that you solved before that may be similar in some ways, and you can reflect on that. You think through in your mind, and then you can take a piece of that. And it is really like you're sculpting, right? And you get these pieces and you keep building and you're building. And then additionally, from your research, you can go online and you can get different pieces of information. Like maybe part of what I'm trying to solve requires me to have a better understanding about a particular business practice, a particular technology. So I can do some background research so I can better understand that technology or that business practice. And from having that better understanding, I can add that to my pool of sort of data that I'm gathering, right? It's really, it's almost like, I guess you could say it's a form of data mining, really, right? Is kind of what my process is for solving problems. Like if I need to come up with a procedure, or I need to solve an issue for a client or something like that. So that's a lot of how the process goes. And some of the strategies that I have used that have worked for me as well when I get frustrated like that is I will step away from the problem. So if I'm in the middle of something and I'm stuck and I'm just getting really frustrated and I'm just drawing a blank, I don't know what to do next. Sometimes, you know, it's kind of like you get to the point of diminishing returns. So you just need to just either move on to another task. Sometimes I'll step outside, take a breather. So one other thing I want to connect that to is, and again, the higher up you get in management, I think these types of pressures and stresses, they get higher and higher. So again, it's the bigger the reward, it's like the bigger the reward, the harder you have to sort of work, right? You think about, look at the people who make the most money, right? You look at something like, let's say, some kind of a surgeon, right? A surgeon is under a tremendous amount of pressure. You make a mistake, someone could die. I mean, that's a serious consequence. The work is very technical, so there's a lot of knowledge, right? But bottom line is there's a lot of skills involved. There's a lot of pressure involved, a lot of stress involved, and the implications of the work are much more severe. Because once again, for example, if I make mistakes in my procedures, so let's say I'm coming up with procedures on how are we going to deal with certain problems or failures, right? So if we have a certain system that fails, first of all, what are the business implications of that failure, right? Are we talking about our entire client base being down? Are we talking about just one customer, multiple customers, just an individual? And then what are all the risks? Like quantify the risks, legal, monetary, you know, all that stuff you need to sort of formulate and consider when you are strategizing, right? So I think when you look at things like, let's go to the extreme levels, right? Let's look at somebody like a CEO, and you say you're a CEO for a major company, like let's say Amazon, right? And you're flying around in a private jet, right? And you're doing all these wonderful things, and then people who don't necessarily understand the pressure that a CEO is under may look at this as kind of like, you know, what is this person doing to deserve all of that? And there's kind of a negative connotation of the lifestyle of people at that level. But the reality is that when you have the responsibility of an entire corporation, right? So you're making decisions that are affecting thousands of people, their livelihood, the success of the company. You have a board of directors that you are answering to. It's a lot of pressure. And for example, I remember, early on in my career, the idea of you just working sort of 9 to 5, you put in your hours and you go home and that's it, you're done, right? The higher up you go, that kind of goes away, right? So you can't just necessarily look at all the perks and the positives of the management, because all those perks and the positives, like, it's very well earned. Because let's say, for example, if you are a CEO of a major corporation, right? So you have a family, right? And you have a company to run, right? You need to sort of keep a balance between your work life and your personal life. And when you are a CEO, the amount of hours, like, you're working a lot of long hours, and that can put a strain on your personal life. So think about the ability for you to sort of just get on a jet and fly whenever you want to. So you could actually maybe take your family with you, right? You have a business meeting in Seattle or whatever it is, you can just take your family and they can travel with you, right? So there's different things like that you can do, where you can sort of, in a way, have your cake and eat it too. So you're working hard, you're putting in a lot of hours, but yet you're not getting in a situation where you're like abandoning your family. So and that's a whole, I want to get into some of that stuff in the future, but I don't want to run this live stream on too long. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you guys have any questions, specific questions that I can answer for you, I will do my best to answer them for you. But I guess the bottom line is, I definitely feel very thankful and grateful for, all of the benefits and perks of, being at a senior level. But I certainly earn every bit of it, for sure. I certainly don't discount the work of, because I mean, hey, I was that junior guy, right? So I know the work that was put in. I mean, hey, look, when I started, I was doing 16-hour days, right? That was me. 16-hour days when I was 22, 23, 24, right? That was the norm for me. And that wasn't required. That was me going the extra mile. That was me being dedicated to the job, right? But the point is, it's not that junior people are not doing the work, right? However, it's just a different perspective when, like, for example, case in point, I was working 16-hour days because I chose to work 16-hour days, right? I didn't have responsibilities that required me to work 16-hour days. Right? If I didn't want to work 16-hour days, I could have very well done that, and it really wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Now, was I the only one benefiting from all those hours that I was putting in? No, the firm was absolutely benefiting from that because I wasn't getting paid overtime, right? So essentially, I was putting in a lot of hours for free. So the company was getting more work out of me for the same amount of money. So they were benefiting as well, but there wasn't a dependency on what I was doing, in terms of, if I didn't put in those hours, it would hurt the firm, right? But when you get into senior management, it comes to a point where there is somewhat of a dependency. Because, for example, let's say there's a major problem that occurs that affects the business in a major way, and this problem is not resolved by the end of the business. So as a manager, you can't just walk out, right? You've got to make sure that whatever the problem is, that it gets resolved before trading the next day, right? So, and again, sometimes depending on what the situation is, obviously it's not going to be just managers, right? So you're going to need to keep some of the junior people with you as well to actually, because they're the ones who are going to be doing a lot of the operational stuff. But the point is that the buck stops with you, right? You are the one that has to take the initiative and responsibility. Because, for example, what are the resources that you need to solve the problem, right? You need to figure out what the problem is, what resources you need, and then be able to identify, like, I need a person to handle this, person to handle that, and coordinate everything. Make sure that communication is flowing with the customers, with everyone that needs to know, upper management. So there's a lot of responsibility involved there. And then also, if something happens, outside of normal business hours as well, you may need to be contacted. Someone may need to call you at 9 p.m. at night, 10 p.m. at night, and you got to take that call, right? You can't just be like, I'm tired, I'm at home, leave me alone. So it's definitely a lot of pressure. It can be very stressful. But in the same token, it is definitely very rewarding. And I would say things fluctuate. So when you have a period of time where things are sort of flowing in sort of a positive way, where things are going the way they should, it can be very rewarding, because a lot of the reason why things would be flowing in a positive way would be the result of your hard work that you put in before, right? Because again, there's a lot of things on your shoulder, right? So if things are flowing well, then that's your work, right? Because if you're not doing your work properly, if you don't plan things properly, you don't strategize properly, things won't be flowing smoothly, right? So those times are awesome, right? Because you can sort of be proud of the hard work that you put in during the difficult times. You can be proud of the systems that you put in place that are now being utilized. Like, you remember all those long nights that you sat down and you were stuck and you were frustrated, and you came up with a solution, and the solution that you came up with is now being utilized, and successfully so. And the fact that things are running smoothly that's a rewarding feeling, that knowing that, you did things the right way. Now, unfortunately, that's a double-edged sword, because if you made mistakes, if you didn't anticipate certain things, then what you have is an extension of bad times. Because if there was a problematic situation that was going on, and you were sitting down trying to solve some kind of issue, and your plan that you came up with has some major flaws, so now you had that period of time where you were trying to solve this thing, then you thought you solved it, and then that flaw comes and bites you in the butt and creates another problem, and now it's a whole mess, because this was your plan. You chose to do this instead of something else, and now because of something you did, now there's another, and again, the buck stops with you. So it's not like, earlier in my career where I could, not that you're pointing fingers, but it's just, it's not your responsibility, right? You just do your job, you do what you're told to do, and if things don't work out properly, then yes, you work together to solve it, but ultimately it's not on you. Right? It wasn't your procedure, right? But when it is your procedure, it falls on you, and it's kind of it comes to your competence, right? Your competence comes into question, because if you have a pattern of making bad decisions and missing things, that's you not doing a good job, right? Previously, your job was to follow the procedures given. So you just have to, memorize, right? Memorize the procedures and make sure you're following the procedures. Make sure you're reading the whatever instruction manuals that you have. Whereas when you're creating the procedures, the mistakes can come in not from you not recalling, but from you, not creating procedures that basically are effective for what is needed. So anyway, I am starting to ramble, and this live stream ran on a lot longer than I planned on. Again, if you guys have any questions, thank you CKKO for joining in. If you guys have any questions, please do let me know and I can address them. I have some questions already from some of you guys. If you guys remember, I did an interview with one of the subscribers previously who, it's been awesome because he learned a lot from the channel, and it actually led him to getting some really awesome jobs. He just started a new job, and he had some questions. He's actually doing onboarding, so he wanted to talk about that in terms of what are some recommendations for onboarding. So I'll put together some tips for any of you guys that are doing onboarding and give you some of my recommendations. I think one of the things or areas of focus that he wanted was talking about, hey, what's up, Mohit Jawa? Okay, I'm gonna call you Mo. So I'm gonna put together some procedures for onboarding for you guys, and I think the focus that he wanted was communication. So keeping things smooth in terms of communicating between your clients and the business side and things of that nature. So I definitely have a lot of information that I can share with you guys, as well as I wanted him to share with us the interview process that he went through to get the current role that he has. I think that'll be awesome for you guys. So I will schedule the interview. I think we might be doing it this weekend. I'm not sure when, but maybe tomorrow or Sunday we'll do the interview. And I have some other interviews that I'm lining up as well with other subscribers. We're going to be doing career-related interviews, so people can share with us their experiences. And also, I want to get back to some interview videos like before, interview tips and things like that. I definitely want to cover some of my recommendations for those of you that are in development, because I definitely have some awesome tips for you guys that are in development, because I work a lot with development. I've been working with development for a long time, very closely with development, and I can tell you, as I'll call myself a customer, as a customer of development, I definitely see a lot of room for improvement in terms of certain trends that I have identified, in terms of problems that I see with a lot of developers, problems that I think I know can be adjusted fairly easily. All that is required is the desire to improve, and also the, what is the word I'm looking for? The discipline to put in the work, right? So I will cover that in a future episode, but I will leave you with the main theme of that discussion, and that's going to be communication. By far, one of the key issues with development is communication, and not from one perspective, from multiple perspectives. Now, there's a good and a bad side to that. The good side is, since there are some very, very common communication related problems with development, The good side for you is that with the tips and suggestions that I'm going to give you guys, you have a very easy opportunity to stand out among the crowd, right? Because if you have a lot of developers that have the same kind of problem that's communication related, that is costly to your employers, because ineffective or inefficient communication causes delays, causes errors and mistakes, right? So there's a dollar figure associated with this. Business is all about profits. So in the hiring process, if you can present yourself as someone who has superior communication to the typical developer, that can make you stand out from the crowd so easily. And that is what all of us want, right? When it comes to the hiring process, that's what you want. You're not the only one that has the skills that you have, right? You know you're not the only one. So the only way you're going to get any job is by you standing out from the crowd. That's the bottom line that you guys have to understand. You get hired not because you have the skills, right? Most people who apply have the skills, right? You get the job because you present yourself as the best candidate. So if there's a common issue that you can resolve, you can easily get a leg up on the competition. Now, that's assuming that you are already a competent developer, right? Obviously, having excellent communication skills, but you're not a good developer, well, that's kind of a problem. But if you have the skills, but you just have the similar communication flaw, then simply correct that and stand up from the competition. And you can, I see a huge opportunity to dominate in the interview process. But I'll cover that in more detail in a future video. Before I shut down, Mo has, let's see, it would be very helpful if you could explain market window terms which are used there. I don't understand what you mean. Market window terms which are used there. Could you elaborate what you mean by that? So as you guys can see, I've been getting used to this live streaming stuff. Hopefully, I think I've gotten the sound issues solved. Previously, you guys couldn't hear me. I was just really noobing out. But I think I have gotten that taken care of. I've certainly gotten the look of things much improved. But I still see a lot of room for improvement. Like a live stream like this, I feel I could have done a much better job. Hopefully this was helpful for some of you guys, but I definitely feel that there's a lot of improvement that I can still make. I think I only started live streaming, what's it been, like a couple months now? So I think I'm growing pretty quickly for a few months in. Because as you guys know, all my content was previously I just edited everything and posted it up. I really didn't do this live interaction. Hey Mo, I want to shut down the live stream, so I don't know if you're still there. You wanted something about market window? If you could let me know what you're talking about, so I can shut down this live stream that ran on longer than it should have. You folks that are listening in, go ahead and click on the like button Show some love. CKKO said it looks good. Yeah, I'm just trying a little something, something. But it could be better. We're actually gonna have, hey, CKKO, when are we gonna do your interview, by the way? CKKO is gonna be joining our dev team, and we're gonna be doing an interview with him, but I don't think we have a scheduled time. Pavan is gonna be, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly. We're gonna do his interview Saturday or Sunday, I'm not sure when. Okay, I think Mo fell asleep at the wheel. So Mo, you can if you can post your question again in more detail on this video when it gets posted, I'll do my best to answer the question. Lisa Lynn says, I have 2 offers. Should I take consultant or full-time, or no big difference? That's actually a very good question. You know, it's consulting has gotten really weird to me. Way back when I started, you know, before there was the internet. I'm being silly, but a lot has changed, you know, between when I started and now. I mean, look at the Amex, right? Everything is digital now. A lot has changed, but specifically as far as consulting, I remember consulting was something that, and I admit I wasn't doing it myself, so maybe some of this information was inaccurate, but people always talked about consultants, how much money they make. Consultants, they make all this money. I guess the idea was you're a consultant, so you're not getting the normal benefits package, right? You're not getting vacation time and things like that. So to compensate you for that, they would pay you more money to sort of make up the difference, which was the idea. And then on top of that, you have overtime because you're paid hourly. So, you know, you can make a lot of money. But I guess it's more complicated than that. But first of all, I'll start with what I've recognized in terms of the reality of consulting that I've seen in the past. So initially, again, it was always talk about big money. But then when I started pursuing some consulting assignments, I found that the pay was the same, which means the pay was less, right? You got to do the math. If the pay for a consultant is the same as a full-time, then the pay is less, right? Full-time person, you're making X amount of dollars, which includes vacation time, medical benefits, right? All that good stuff, right? If you're getting the same money and you're not getting paid vacation, no benefits, that means you have to subtract that from your income. So if you take a two-week vacation, automatically you need to subtract 2 weeks of pay from your annual income, right? Because for 2 weeks of the year, you're getting paid $0, right? You got to also consider if you don't have medical benefits, then you have to get your own medical benefits. You have to subtract the amount of money that you have to pay monthly for some kind of health insurance, right? So bottom line is, I don't understand why there are these companies, maybe they're just being cheap, I don't know what it is, why there's these companies that actually offer the same rate as full-time for consulting. And I don't know if they're still doing that now, because right now is a great time. By the way, if you guys hate your jobs, well, you might have missed a little bit of a window, but if you hate your jobs, now might be the time, because, you know, there was a time where things were really bad and you definitely didn't want to bounce around. And so it's kind of like suck it up and be, you know, deal with it. But right now, there was a trend of there are more jobs than people, and a lot of the banks have been getting very desperate. I was contacted not too long ago. I don't know if I had told you guys about this, but I was contacted not too long ago about an opportunity. And just to give you an idea of how crazy things have gotten, the floor of what they were offering was $50,000 more than what I was making at the time. Now, throughout most of my career, the typical thing is a company will offer you 5% or 10% increase to sort of incentivize you to leave your... It just blew my mind when she said that to me. Now, it's not literally no cap, but my assessment of that language means to me that they weren't really worried about being able to pay whatever a candidate was asking for, within reason, of course. Meaning, if they found someone really good and that person wanted, you know, a really fat paycheck, within reason, they could have gotten it. I think anything that they wouldn't be willing to pay would have been somebody being ridiculous. So that's what, when I hear no cap. So that's how it is. So if you're looking to make a move, now is the time to make a move. Now, as far as consulting, I don't think it's fair that they would offer you the same amount of money. It should definitely be more money, because once again, you take vacation, that's coming out of your pocket. Your medical insurance is coming out of your pocket. You got to consider that. That being said, I think there's other factors, and maybe that's why there's a disconnect between what people say about how much money consultants make versus what they actually make. So I guess there's one factor. You have people that are, to me, I consider it, you're lowballing. If you're offering the same money as full-time, to me, you're lowballing. I don't know what your deal is, more than full-time. And then the final good amount of overtime opportunities. I think that's the magic formula. I think that's where you could have someone that's getting a lot of money as a consultant, even though it's not necessarily that their hourly rate is crazy, but you combine everything together and it could be crazy. Like, let's say, for example, what if you're averaging 3 hours overtime per day, right? I mean, do the math. 3, 6, 9. That can rack up pretty quickly to some pretty fat paychecks. So that could be what some people are talking about when they say consultants make a lot of money. Now, I have seen very rarely in the past, I've seen some consulting assignments that actually were big money, period. And I'm just mind blown. I mean, I'm just like, monthly? Whoa. But those were very rare. So your mileage may vary. But as far as taking a full-time versus a consulting, I mean, that's a personal decision that you need to make. I think the thing that's nice about consulting is the flexibility. If you take a full-time job, you don't want to be bouncing around. If you're just starting out your career and the economy's doing good, definitely don't let a company hold you back. If you're working hard and you're growing, like I was when I first started, I was growing so fast. I was learning so much. I kept buying books and reading and learning and growing. I was just moving so fast that some of the opportunities I have, like, I outgrew them very quickly, and they didn't sort of, they were not, I guess, nurturing to that growth, that fast growth that I had. So it's kind of like, I'm sure if I'd stayed like 3 years or so, something would have opened up, but that would have meant me sort of wasting 2 years, right? Because if I'm already ready to move to the next level and there's no opportunities there, then I'm going to be stuck at a certain pay, at a certain skill level for 2 years longer than I need to, just waiting for an opportunity. So I could do that, or I could look for something else and then make that instant jump to the next level up, more pay, you know, higher skill job. And that's how I started my career. So if you're new and the economy's good, then, you know, that's a strategy that that you can increase your salary very quickly, you can grow very quickly, and that can be sensible. But outside of that unique circumstance, generally speaking, you don't want to be hopping around too much because that's not going to look good on your resume. So you want to stay at a job, I mean, a bare minimum of 2 years. I would say 3 years is a better number. 5 years is a good, like, you know, you're not, that looks good. Like if every job you had, you were at the job for 5 years or more, that has a good look to future employers in terms of, because they're making an investment in you when they hire you, right? So they don't want to hire someone who's going to leave shortly after. That's one of the reasons why sometimes you may be overqualified for a job, because they look at it as, we can't afford to pay you a good enough salary that you're going to want to stay for any period of time, right? The pay that we're going to give you is not going to be enough. Like you're going to be an easy target for some recruiter to pull you out of the firm. So you won't get the job based on that. Like they like you, you have the skill sets, but you're too senior to the point where they don't have the budget to really feel confident that you're going to stay around. So, so looking at a resume where you've been at jobs, 5 years plus, that looks good. So with that being said, that's kind of restrictive if you want flexibility to, maybe you want to make a transition into a different field slightly. Maybe you're a database admin and you want to move into systems admin, or you want to move into development or something like that. You could, if you have been doing the groundwork, you either taking classes online or night classes or whatever it is, you've been doing the groundwork and you have attained these new skills, but you're in an environment where there isn't an opportunity for you to leverage those skills yet. I think as a consultant, that is the perfect environment. It's almost like leasing versus buying. In a way, it's kind of like leasing versus buying. With leasing, you want to constantly change cars all the time, then leasing is perfect for that. But if you want to keep a car long term and like drive it till the wheels come off, like then you want to buy something. So if you want the flexibility to sort of move around when you want to move around, and you're looking to move quickly in your career, like you have a goal. So I'm just starting out, I'm like at a help desk level and I want to be a developer in like 5 years, then consulting might be the perfect way to do that, because whenever you're ready, whenever you have your skill set at a level where you could actually get a job based on the interviews, then you could easily just end a consulting assignment, go to a next one, and not get penalized, right? A future employer, oh, you were here 6 months, you were here a year, but you were a consultant, right? Consulting assignments can be short term, 6 months, 3 months, a year, right? So if you've been consulting for 5 years and in 5 years you had 5 jobs or 4 jobs, that I don't think would raise alarms. Now, if you had 5 full-time jobs in 5 years, now that could hurt your, future opportunities. So that's something to consider. Consulting, flexibility to move quickly, to move around. You can go to a different field, and even you work at a company and you don't like it, you want to try something else. Like maybe you're new to the industry and you want to sort of try things out. Right? What's it like to work for a big bank? You get a consulting assignment at a big bank. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not for you. If it's not for you, whatever. End the assignment. Well, obviously find something first, right? So you could go shop around for something at a startup, or you could go to a different side of the business. Like you have a lot of flexibility to move around. So I think that's one of the key things with consulting. However, I guess I've covered a lot of the positives. Now let's talk about some of the negatives. Okay, CKKO, send me an email. So some of the negatives are, as a full-time worker, your employer is has a vested interest in you. It's quite expensive to hire a full-time worker. From an acquisition standpoint, and also from, I'll call it a maintenance standpoint, in terms of, now that we've acquired you, you've taken the offer. Now we want to keep you. We want retention, right? There's a lot of money invested in each employee, right? Because there's training, right? So you have key personnel that take time out of their assignments that need to get done so they can train a new person, right? Maybe you even pay money for them to take a class or whatever it is, right? So they have a lot vested in you. They also have a lot vested in you in terms of, in banking, there's a lot of proprietary knowledge, right? Each company has a lot of proprietary systems, strategies, technologies, whatever it is. And unless, when they're looking to hire someone, unless they're hiring someone who used to work there before, just about every candidate is not going to have any knowledge of their systems, right? So the idea of hiring someone that already knows your systems, like, that's not going to happen. So every person you hire, you got to train them on your systems. So to spend all this time, you know, acquiring someone, training them on your proprietary systems, and then to have them leave, you know, that hurts, right? Because now they got to go and find someone again and go through the whole process. So what does this mean? This means that in terms of job security, unfortunately, the economy is something that is always going to be in flux. You have good times, you have bad times, the economy goes up, the economy goes down. So what happens during bad times when you're a consultant? Now, this can go two ways. In bad times, sometimes what companies will do, they will potentially wow, unfortunately it's not a black and white thing, but it could actually be a good thing for consultants, depending on what kind of consulting you're doing and what kind of companies you're applying for. But because they'll actually lay off some of the full-time people, depending on how redundant your role might be, and they'll bring on consultants, and maybe they will pay less, or, you know, they just want that flexibility, right? But on the flip side of that, if you get into a company and you establish yourself as a critical asset, right? So not only are you've been there, you're trained, they spend all the time on you, you know the systems inside and out, but you have a unique skill set. Like, you are the one on the team that knows a certain critical system the best, right? You are the best person at a certain skill set or a certain system. So bottom line, getting rid of you would hurt the firm, right? So if you can get yourself into that kind of position, I think you are in an ideal scenario for tough times, to where, you know, there's never any guarantees with employment. That's the one thing to always consider. But in that scenario, you could be in an ideal scenario where, you know, times are tough, people are getting laid off, the economy is awful or whatever, but you're good to go, right? You're very much a critical part of the team. The company relies on you, and getting rid of you would hurt them big time. So as long as, you know, the business is not really falling apart to where they're just hemorrhaging money, you can have a certain level of security. But I don't know if I'd want to be a consultant during that time. So if I had a feeling that the economy was trending downwards, I would be a little bit afraid of being a consultant, because I just feel it's too easy to just dump a consultant, right? You're not really part of the family. right? You're just a consultant. So I feel like it's easier for them to just like get rid of you. And if it ends up, oh, we need someone else, you know, hey, we'll just bring on another consultant, because they can bring on consultants very quickly. The process, just to give you an example, one time I got an offer from one of the top 10 banks in the world, and the hiring process was, I believe, a month, right? A month just to bring on a new person, right? Now, a consultant, you can generally get approvals, and maybe within a couple of weeks or something like that, you could bring someone on, maybe even quicker than that. So I think there's a lot more flexibility to sort of just get rid of consultants, to cut the budget. Times are tough. You want to cut the budget. All right, so we have 4 consultants. Let's get rid of 2 of them. No big deal, right? Now, if you have 4 employees, the idea of firing 2 of them, I mean, there's again, it's not black and white, right? Because maybe you were hired as part of a new team for a new product, a new service, that in tough times, the company's not really vested that much into this new thing. So they might just get rid of it, which means they will get rid of all the full-time consulting, whatever. They'll just close out the entire division. But if you're part of the critical part of the business, then things can be much more different than that. So I don't know. Hopefully that has helped you out, Lisa. Consultant or full-time? I think I covered a lot of the positives. I covered the negatives as well. But ultimately, I think, Lisa, you need to think about what's important to you, and that's how you make your decision. You want that flexibility, obviously that's the consulting. You want that long-term security, then that's the full-time. Lisa. So Lisa, was that helpful for you? And can you tell me what matters to you? What are your priorities right now? What are you looking for from your next opportunity? That's ultimately the question that you need to ask yourself. What matters most to you? What do the next 5 years look like to you in terms of your career? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? What are your immediate career goals? Those are the kinds of questions that I'll be asking, because I think this is really a question of trajectory. So, because if you're looking at the now, then it's a much simpler equation. But if you're looking at a trajectory in terms of in 5 years, I want to be here, then it's like, oh, okay, based on that, I need a lot of flexibility to make those moves. So consultant, that's an easy decision, right? I want long-term stability. I want to grow within a company. You know, I want to be able to get that seniority. I want to, I can start at this position and work really hard and get promoted. Maybe I get a management role at some point in time. That's a full-time thing. I think there's something else I was going to consider: consulting versus full-time. I mentioned about benefits. So one little correction with that. So you can actually sort of get benefits as a consultant. So what it is it's a matter of how you do your I don't know if taxes is a correct term to use, but are you going to be a W-2 worker, or are you going to be, I think it's 1040, corp to corp? Don't quote me on this. I'm sure I'm butchering the correct terminology, but the bottom line is you can get benefits as a consultant. All you need to do is if you're working through an agency, right, you do a W-2 through the agency. So basically this is what you would do. So a consulting assignment comes up with Morgan Stanley, right? You're working with Alpha Recruiting Agency, right? So what you do is you actually, since you're not working directly for Morgan Stanley, you're working for the agency, you ask them if they can do a W-2 arrangement for you. And what that would mean is essentially you would be an employee of the agency, and I may be butchering the terminology, but you'd be an employee of the agency. I don't know if they would be considered a contractor. That may not be the right word to use, but essentially you'd be working for them under a W-2. But the bottom line is they can actually extend their benefits package to you. Now, I don't know if the benefits package is different because you're not a full-time for the agency, but I do know that it is very possible for you to be a consultant for Morgan Stanley while at the same time getting health benefits from the recruiting agency that that you're working for, right? Because it's the recruiting agency's client is Morgan Stanley. You work for the recruiting agency. You work. How does it? You work for Morgan Stanley on behalf of the agency, I guess is a better way to put it, right? So you're working for their client. But bottom line is that's a way you can do it. But not all agencies will offer that, but you gotta ask them. They'll usually ask you, but just ask them, you know, can I be on a W-2? Generally speaking, I haven't been impressed with the packages that they offer through an agency. Generally, you're gonna get a much sweeter package working for a company. Also, I didn't even mention some of the other perks. Like I just said benefits. Let's talk about the benefits, right? I mean, depending on the level that you are in your career, I mean, I think I crossed the 3-week threshold for vacation a long time ago. Probably, definitely well over a decade. So 3 weeks vacation. Once you get to, not quite executive level, but like vice president and all those kinds of roles, AVP, generally speaking at that level, you're going to get like 3 weeks vacation. And then as you get more senior, you get more vacation. So, the last benefits that I got was I went from 3 weeks to 4 weeks. This is paid vacation as a full-time, right? So 3 weeks paid, 4 weeks paid, and then I got unlimited. That's a new thing. I think that's kind of I don't know how Google does it, but that's kind of Google has been doing a lot of really cool like benefits packages. And the new thing now is that a lot of these companies are now trying to offer them as well. So like free food and, you know, there's all kinds of little perks and stuff like that. So one of the things they do is the unlimited vacation. I'll talk about that in another video. It's kind of a trick. I mean, yeah, you can. There's no cap. They're not going to tell you, you know, hey, well, I mean, come on, you can't take off the whole year, obviously, right? So, but there's no specific cap. There's no like, oh, you already took 2 weeks vacation. So in theory, you could do something like, what's a reasonable utilization of a unlimited vacation? I would say if you took maybe 3, I don't know, maybe let's say 4 days a month. 4 days a month. I don't think anybody would really care about that. I mean, if you do 4 days a month, right? So that's 4, 8. I mean, I think even 4 days a month at the end of the year, you're taking a significant amount of vacation time, but it's not enough to be like, oh man, you're abusing the system. However, it's easier said than done. Like I said, it's a little bit of a trick. But generally speaking, I'm right at that month. So outside of the unlimited vacation, I'm typically going to be right around the month vacation thing. So that's vacation. Obviously, you're not getting any of that as a consultant. Any vacation time you have to, that's out of your pay. The other benefit is 401k, right? If you are even mid 20s, upper 20s, 30s, you need to be thinking about retirement, right? I know you think you're young, you're just 28, I'm just 32. You need to be thinking about retirement. Like, the Social Security is a joke. It'll take time to accumulate a good, healthy retirement package, right? So one of the benefits of full-time is you have these companies that will contribute to your 401k. So basically they'll do matching. So let's say for every dollar that you put in, they put $1 in or something. So I mean, that's like free money. They're doubling it, right? And I mean, I would urge you to look into, there's a lot of free information online, but look into strategies of how to work your 401k. But that's another benefit that you would get from doing full-time, which you're not going to get from consulting. However, if you get a good consulting assignment and you're making good money, I mean, you could open your own 401k, right? But obviously no one's contributing. So that's the main thing. The only way you're going to get that free money is from a full-time job that offers that perk, where they're actually literally giving you free money. They're, so you take a, if I remember correctly, you take a pre-tax dollar from your income, right? And your company puts another dollar in there. Like that's another dollar that's not part of your salary. They're literally just giving you $1. And that's going into your retirement plan. So you can supercharge your 401k plan very quickly if you're smart, and you, like, anyone who has that kind of benefit, please think about aggressively contributing to your retirement plan. So put a good percentage in there, and watch that money just grow and grow and grow with your company matching that. So there's other benefits, but I think those are the main ones. So vacation time. So if you like to travel, for example, right? If you're big on traveling, you want to be full-time. Or you want to get those real sweet big time paid consulting assignments to where you make so much money that taking off 3 weeks and not making any money, it's kind of like whatever, right? You're making so much excess income that, losing 3 weeks of money is kind of like whatever, right? Because the amount of money you're making even in 1 week. So for the month, you only work 1 week, but you make so much money in that week. Plus every month you have so much excess income. So you're building up that money in the bank. So again, taking that 3 weeks vacation is like whatever. But if you have a normal consulting assignment where it's not that much money, then you got to consider your vacation becomes very expensive, right? It's not only that you're losing money for 2 weeks, but when you consider the cost of vacation, you've got to add the money that you've lost, right? So let's say in 2 weeks you would have earned, I don't know, $4,000, right? So in 2 weeks you would have earned $4,000, and you're going to go to Italy on vacation. And let's say it's just you or whatever, and you spend $4,000 on that vacation. So you spent $4,000 to go to Italy, but you didn't work for those 2 weeks, so you lost $4,000. So I really look at that as an $8,000 equation. All right, that's the way I look at that. I look at that as an $8,000 vacation, right? Because what's the difference between earning $4,000 and then spending it on something versus not getting the $4,000, right? It's the same difference. Like if you had gotten paid $4,000, so you got paid 2 weeks vacation, right? And you you spent $4,000 on, I don't know, whatever it is, and I don't know what whatever you did, and you rented an exotic car on your vacation. So you spent $4,000 on the exotic car plus $4,000 for the rest of it, the plane, hotel, and food. Right? So it's the same difference. It's the same difference as you going on a vacation and spending $4,000 on an exotic car rental plus, you know, $4,000 on food, plane, and whatever. Same difference as you going on a $4,000 vacation, but then you're not getting paid for those 2 weeks. So again, that's an $8,000 vacation. For every day you're on vacation, the cost, you have to add the salary that you're missing. You got to add up whatever money you actually spend plus whatever money you're not making, and that's just the way I look at it. So yeah, there's that. Lisa, you are very welcome. SP123 says, what's your diet look like? Do you eat 3 meals a day? My job has unlimited time off, but our manager has to give approval. Yeah, we had to get approvals as well. But I would normally get, like, I would send my request and I would get an automatic, like, boom, you'd see the email come in, approved. I mean, obviously, again, if you go crazy, then yeah, you're gonna get like, hey man, because it's not that you're taking more time than you're allotted, but obviously they hire you to do a job, and if you're taking so much time that you're not going to be able to get your job done, right? So that's the problem. That's where your manager is going to be like, hey, 3 meals a day. Well, in the job where I had the unlimited vacation and they were doing that, there's a term for it. There's a term for this kind of like Google centric or Google type benefits packages. I don't know what the term is, but in those types of jobs, so the job that I had that was that kind of environment, we would get free lunches on Thursdays, and many days, a good amount of days, they would bring like a breakfast. They might bring like some sandwiches and things like that. But generally speaking, what my routine is we generally have a huge like pantry in the office. So I generally tend to keep cereals in the office. So oatmeal or Cheerios is my favorite. You know, it's kind of not too bad because a lot of the cold cereals are not really good for you. But Cheerios is one of the better ones, and you can put fruit in there, blueberries, stuff like that. But bottom line is I'd keep cereals in the office. And I apologize, I have allergies. What else would I cereal? And I try to bring my lunch as much as possible. And it's ironic to me that I could certainly afford to buy lunch every day and eat at a fancy restaurant and all that kind of stuff. But I choose to increase my income basically by making my own lunches. And essentially my breakfasts as well, because I'm not buying my breakfast, right? I'm eating cereals. So essentially I make more money than a colleague that eats out all the time, right? Because you have to subtract that eating out all the time from their income, right? So it's ironic that I find that people that make less money, in many ways they spend more, right? They're making less money, but they're eating out all the time. And it's kind of silly because you don't have that much money to begin with. and then you're sort of spending it all willy-nilly. You have all these monthly expenses. You got some crazy cable plan, and you got this car that costs way too much for your income, and then you're eating out all the time, plus you're buying food at home, and it's insane. And then you end up being, you're kind of struggling and things are really tight. And then you look at someone like me who, I could even go as far as there's these programs where you pay monthly and they'll bring your meals. They'll literally like cook meals and bring them to you, and you can select what meals you want, like a meal plan thing. I could do that. That'd be ultimate convenience, and that really wouldn't affect me financially. But yet I'm the one who's bringing my lunch in. I don't have to. But I think it's a mindset thing. You know what I mean? It's I remember a long time ago when I worked in retail, one of my managers told me that some of the cheapest people are the wealthiest. And it was true. I remember one family that had a lot of money, and they would come in, and these guys would haggle the hell out of me. Oh my goodness. They would just haggle and haggle and haggle. And that's very typical. Right? If you want to be financially successful, then you need to be a master at managing your money, which means that you are very familiar with and understand the concept that little expenses add up, right? So you want to be lean and mean. Right? You cut costs as much as you can. You see, you're running your life like a business. That's what corporations do, right? They will try to keep their costs as low as possible to maximize their profit margin. And if you run your life in some ways like a business, then you do the same thing. You cut costs as much as possible. You never spend more money than you have to. Now, I'm not saying you're going to live life all frugal. You're not going to have any fun. I certainly have fun, right? Nice cars, nice bikes, nice vacations, but that's isolated spending, right? I prioritize what I spend my money on. I have things that I'm passionate about, and these are the things that I spend my money on when the time is right and within reason. But everything else, I'm cheap about. Like, that's generally how I approach things. I am cheap about most things, and then I splurge on very few things, right? So I'll bring my lunches. I'll shop at discount stores for clothing. I'll buy used things sometimes. But then I'll buy a really nice car. But even when I buy a really nice car, I do it in a way where it actually doesn't cost me that much. Like, I remember a long time ago when I bought a Porsche, and it was an interesting experience because, first of all, when I went to the dealer and I brought my, I basically showed up with a briefcase with a ton of cash. And when the dealer saw how much money that I brought in, he was kind of taken aback because a lot of people, they buy cars with no money down. Cars that they can barely afford. So it was unusual to see someone coming in with that much cash. But because of doing that, and because of me being selective in which car that I bought, I was actually driving around in this high performance vehicle, and most people see me driving by like, look at that guy, spending all that money on a car. And I guess technically I did, but the thing about it is, it was costing me far less to run than, say, someone in a new Camry. So it's kind of a bizarre scenario. So here I am driving this nice Porsche, and there you are driving a brand new Camry, And in your mind, you're thinking, I'm spending all this money on this car, when in reality, you're spending, in some cases, you could be spending even twice what I was spending. My car payments were so low, ridiculously low. But one key strategy that I utilize is living under my means. So if you see me with something nice, realize that I could afford something much nicer than that, because I will always leave myself this sort of cushion where like a lot of people, they spend exactly like every dollar they're making, it's like they're spending it all. They're spending money before they make it. That's not the way you do it. You live under your means and therefore accumulate cash, which allows you in the future to make investments. And then you can invest into things that can actually make your money work for you, where now you're multiplying money, right? Now, instead of money just sitting in the bank, earning nothing, you can take that money and invest it in something that can cause your money to grow much faster. So in the grand scheme of things, with that kind of strategy, long term, your net worth can be so much more than someone who is just, you know, I get a little raise, then I'm going to start, you know, spending even more money. I got another raise, I'm spending even more money. Like, as much money as you're making, you're spending it. So you just never get anywhere. Always in debt, just not really growing. So SP123 says, how did I learn IT? So I'm more on the business side of things now. I haven't really done any of the traditional IT stuff in quite a while. Like I don't touch hardware. I pretty much, a majority of the things that I touch are proprietary. So that's one of the main things in terms of my area of focus. I don't really touch bought things. I touch built things. So I'm not dealing with Microsoft. I'm not dealing with, you know, all these products that you would buy, Dell hardware or whatever. But when I was doing IT stuff, help desk and desktop support and that kind of thing, that was all self-taught. And pretty much a majority of my knowledge is self-taught. The only thing that is not self-taught is I did, it's not really relevant. I guess the only thing that's really relevant that was not self-taught was I took a finance course, an equities course, some time ago. But everything else, books. I have a lot of books. However, I don't know if it's because I'm older now. I'm much more into video learning. I actually recently got a book about software design, and it's 800 pages, and I'm struggling with that thing, man. I'm struggling. I really, for me, it's better for me to just sit down and just listen to a video, which is interesting because that's what I create for you guys. So I essentially create for you guys things that, like, that's how I would learn, right? That's kind of the beauty of the way that I put things together is the way that works best for me. It makes the most sense for me, right? And that's why a lot of you have enjoyed a lot of the videos, because apparently what works for me also works for you, right? Because ultimately that was the model. The model was I would buy books and I would struggle in terms of a lot of buzzwords and abbreviations, and just I would read a book and you'd be reading paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and they haven't even covered what the thing is that you're learning. And that was crazy to me. To me, and everybody learns differently, but for me, the first thing I want to understand is, what is it that I'm learning, right? If I'm studying about something, right? Like, let's say I'm going to study cryptocurrency. The very first thing that I want to know right away, so I can get context for the later information, is what is cryptocurrency, right? A very simple breakdown of, conceptually what current cryptocurrency actually is, or digital currency rather. But many books, they wouldn't do that. They would start talking about different concepts and the market's this and that and blockchain this and you may see Bitcoin. Da, 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 da. What is it, right? So I would get frustrated with that stuff, and I would say there's a better way to do this, and that's where my videos came from. I said, there's no reason why someone else should have to struggle the way I'm struggling right now. There's a better way to do this. And I say better, there's a little bit of arrogance in that, because again, everybody learns differently. Just because it works for me doesn't mean it's a better method. It's better for me, but for somebody else, maybe that technical jargon book, that's all over the place, maybe that works for you. Right? But that's what that was my goal. Teach this material in a method or a way that would be easier to digest for me. Right? And therefore, other people that learn the way I do. Right? Because I'm not an alien. I know you guys surprised by that. I'm not an alien, so the way that I learn is not going to be unique to just me. There's got to be other people that have a similar learning method. So if I create something that works for me, there's going to be an audience of people that it will work for them as well, and that's you guys, right? All right, guys, this live stream is well expired at this point. I was supposed to do this really short, and I actually was going to do some work tonight, but I am exhausted, so I don't think that's going to happen. Got my buddy calling me at late hours of the night, probably wants to talk about business stuff. Guess I'll give him a call. So that's all, guys. Thanks for joining in. I wish everyone all the success. Keep growing, keep learning. Remember, as I talked about before, goal setting is very important. Don't just float through your career. Set some goals. Don't be afraid to be ambitious with your goal setting. So raise that bar. You can set a goal where, it feels like a big challenge and, will I ever make it that far? Shoot it up even higher than that. That way, if you don't make it to your actual goal, you still make it, a significant way, right? Like if you set your goal here and you don't make it, then you might only end up here. But if you set your goal way up here and you don't make it, you might end up halfway, which is actually a significant thing, right? So that's the philosophy. So don't be afraid to set your goal a little bit aggressively. Oh wow, man, SP 123, really appreciate it, man. Thanks for the support there. That's the first super chat I've gotten in a long time. So don't be afraid to be aggressive in setting your goals, and also be prepared to be flexible to adjust as time goes on. But definitely have a clear goal and what you're trying to achieve, and stick to it. I will leave you with one thing that I've picked up with from this goal setting thing. I will tell you, definitely in the past, many times, I will set these goals. I will look at these things that I feel are so challenging and like, wow, you know, I would never get there, or that would be so hard. And then you achieve it and pass it up. And then you look back and you're like, what was the big deal? Like, really? So just keep that in mind. It's all a matter of perspective, right? Things may look really difficult and confusing, but that's only because you have not yet gotten to the level where you comprehend whatever it is that you're trying to learn or understand, right? So just don't be afraid. Just keep pushing and you'll make it. All right, guys. Let's see. Got to do my international closing. Bonjour, Vigets, salut, dobre noche. What else? What did I forget? Buenas noches. Ciao.